on today's StoryBeat.
I get a call from my agent. He's like, Leonardo DiCaprio's manager just read the script. She loves it. She's giving it to Leo. And then I'm getting a call like, okay, he's going to read it tomorrow. Then I get a call the next day. He started reading it. Then I get a call. He's 10 pages in and he's smiling. He's still reading. He's 25 pages in. I'm getting literally live streaming the reading of the script. And they're like, okay, he finished it. He wants to meet with you.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, the screenwriter, producer, and podcaster Adam Tex Davis, is best known for writing the screenplay of the cult rom-com classic Just Friends that stars Ryan Reynolds, Amy Smart, and Anna Faris. He also wrote the screenplay for the drama Gardener of Eden that stars Lukas Haas and was produced by Leonardo DiCaprio's Appian Way. A graduate of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, Tex has contributed to over 25 feature film scripts and served as co-executive producer and head writer for the Emmy-nominated series Brain Games. Tex is also a co-founder of Atomic Entertainment, overseeing projects like the Netflix educational series Brainchild and a growing slate of podcasts that he writes or stars in, such as Slaycation, Mysteries About True Histories, The Oscars, What Were They Thinking, and Who Smarted? So for all those reasons and many more, I'm truly honored to welcome the prolific, multi-talented writer, producer, and podcaster Adam Tex Davis to StoryBeat today. Tex, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve. Thank you so much for having me. Absolute pleasure.
It's a great privilege, believe me. So you are the very first person I've ever met, I think, with the name Tex, even though there are many Texes out there. How did you become Tex in the first place?
Well, it's not that how I became Tex, it's why am I still Tex is the real reason, because I did a student film at NYU and I played a character named Tex. And my friend and eventual roommate, a guy by the name of Todd Phillips, was in the movie, and he played a character named Weasel. So we were Tex and Weasel, and just screwing around, I had everybody call me Tex on the set, and I was in the movie, and I had a jacket that said Tex on the back and stuff. And then when I wrote the script, at NYU, you put all your scripts in a box, and then they vote on which scripts get made. And I was like, oh, I have to get my script made. I can't be like just going and paying all this money to go to film school and not be able to direct my film. So I was I was very happy when my film got voted to be made. And on the cover, I put Adam Tex Davis so that they could even know that I was going to probably play the Tex character. And then what happened was, after the movie was over, and the movie wound up doing well. It won a bunch of festivals. It helped get me a manager, which then got me an agent and stuff. But the thing is, like, some people would still call me Tex. But then I also realized, look, if you Google search Adam Davis, right? Or there's just thousands of Adam Davises come up. If you Google search Adam Tex Davis, I come up. So it became this marketing tool, and everybody's like, it's like, have you met Adam Davis? Oh, I'm not sure. Tex? Oh, yeah, Tex, of course. Yeah, all right, no, Tex. So that's just like, it was just a marketing and just a way to stand out a little bit, which in this business,
Does it bother you to be called Tex then?
Not at all. No, I love it.
Because it's who people know you to be.
There's some people that only call me Tex. There are some people that staunchly refuse to acknowledge the Tex. They're like, you can't give yourself a nickname. I'm like, but I did. But it's also like a writing name,
And just for those listeners who may not know who Todd Phillips is, Todd Phillips directed the Joker movies. He directed the Hangover movies. He's been around quite some time, yes?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's doing extraordinarily well.
Well. So let's go back in time on your career. Forget about Todd Phillips.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first thought to yourself, oh, entertainment, movies, TV, this is fascinating to me?
Okay, so there were two pivotal things. One was like 7th and 8th grade, basically middle school. They made us write, like it was a creative writing contest for the state. I was living in New Jersey, and New Jersey was having a statewide writing contest. So 7th grade, they were like, everybody needs, as part of your English course, you need to write an entry to this contest. So I got very excited. Like everybody else was dreading it, but I was like, this is great. I'm excited to do this. And I wrote a story and it won the contest.
Wow.
So in 7th grade. Now cut to 8th grade, the same contest comes rolling around. The teacher even tells me, like, Adam, we know you like to write. You won the contest last year. You are excused. You don't have to write a story. Everybody else has to. And they're groaning and moaning. And I'm like, screw that. I'm going to write a story anyway. And I had another story and I wrote the story. I won again. And I'm like, okay, maybe I have an aptitude towards this writing, creative writing and stuff. Cut to, I'm now in high school and I was really into journalism. I was an editor on the school paper. And I, was doing stories, sports, and other stuff. And I realized, sometimes when the story isn't that good, you make up a few things, you quote yourself as an unnamed source, you juice it up a little bit. It's a high school newspaper.
Right,
like, who cares, right? It's your high school newspaper. Well, I get called into the journalism office one day. It's like, congratulations, your sports story that's like 80% BS has just won a nationwide silver medal. You have to go to Columbia University to receive an honor. And then I was like, oh boy. So I didn't have I couldn't tell him that like I was making stuff up or whatever. I mean, the premise of the story was based on truth, but I made up a lot of stuff and I made it better. And then I realized, okay, look, I have enough journalistic integrity to know that I have no journalistic integrity. Why don't we, instead of being a journalist, why don't I do my version of bad journalism, which is take something that's true, start with the kernel of truth, and then embellish the hell out of it and turn it into movies, turn it into stories, stuff like that. So those were the two pivotal moments. And then, I used that to get into NYU writing. And then, most of my movies are based a kernel of truth.
So your degree is in writing.
Technically, it's film and television, but writing is what got me into college. And that's what I've mostly done after college. And
that's what you're most known for is as a writer, but you also produce things and occasionally you act in things as well, yeah?
Yeah, I produced some things. I've directed some things. I've acted in things. I just love it. I love it all. Like when I was at film school, and this is a piece of advice, like do everything. Do everything you can. I mean, I was humping equipment. I was setting up lights. I learned how to set the dolly. I worked a lot of jobs, PA, dolly grip. So yeah, the more you know, I think the better you can, be valuable.
I couldn't agree with you more. I have many different skill sets as well, and I don't use them all the time, but I've used many of them over the years. And yeah, it's really good to know these things.
Yep.
And in fact, the great filmmakers will always talk about the fact that you should know all the different aspects of what's going on a set so that you can do anybody's job if you had to.
Yeah.
At what point did you think to yourself, you know what, I am good enough at this to make a career out of it?
It never dawned on me that was a thing. Like, it's what I did. So of course I was going to write scripts, and of course, like eventually something would sell. I mean, I wasn't sure how the business really worked.
You were that self-confident.
Yeah. It wasn't even that I was confident. It seemed like the thing I was good at better than anything else that I did. So it's like, I might as well, and I love movies and I love writing. I didn't have trouble sitting down and actually doing it. I made a film in school. And then in the interim, while the film was doing festivals and stuff, I wrote 4 scripts. And what happened was, and this is a big takeaway, was I had these 4 scripts that I had written. And then finally, somebody out in LA saw my student film. And they showed it around to a bunch of people.
Oh, wow.
And it was a dark comedy. It really stood out from other films because people either loved it or hated it. I think I entered 40 film festivals.
Right.
I didn't get into 30 of them.
Sure.
And I won the other 10.
Wow.
So it was like a love it or hate it type thing. But to me, that was a better thing. Like the worst thing you could do is like, 3 stars. No, 5 stars or 1 star. That's what you want to do.
Well, the festival circuit at the end of the day is really about taste, the taste of the people that are looking at it in the first place. It's not about the audience in general. It's usually about some 1 or 2 individuals.
Sure. It's funny. I got into a festival in, I don't know if it was Miami, and they sent back the comment cards from the judges. And 3 of them just eviscerated it. They hated it. It was the worst thing they ever saw. And then the other 3 loved it, couldn't praise it enough. So it's like, okay, so that's when you're in a good zone. Like, people are loving it and championing it. But the point is, I wrote these 4 scripts, And somebody finally saw my film out in LA. They sent it around to a bunch of people, and I get a call from a manager. And he says, hey, I love your film. It's dark, it's weird, it's crazy. There's nothing I can do with that. But do you have anything else? Are you working on anything? What do you got? And I said, I've written 4 scripts. And he said, send me your best 2. And so I send him the 2 that I thought were the best. And then he was like, these are great. I want to sign you. We'll work on them. They still need work, but they're going to be great calling cards. They're going to be great to go around and get you meetings and stuff and hopefully get people interested in you.
And this, did you say it was a manager or an agent?
This was a manager.
So the manager can actually work with you theoretically
Yeah.
to work on the material. An agent might be less inclined to do that other than to maybe give you thoughts.
Well, what happened was, I went to all these different agents and they were like, what else do you have that we can sell right now?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, I have these samples. They're like, yeah, I can't really sell the samples. They're too small. They're whatever. They're good to get you in a room, but I need something to sell. And all the agents were like, they passed on me. But one guy was just like, I like your film. I like your scripts. I want to do one more test with you. He said, pick any TV show and write an episode of a TV show. And at the time, I loved The Simpsons. So I wrote a Simpsons episode. It took me about a week or so. And I sent it in and he said, wait, you wrote this in a week? This didn't exist a week ago? I go, no. And he goes like, okay, I love this. I'm signing you. But we still have to figure out the next thing that we're going to go out with. But at least I know I have something, a diamond in the rough here that I want to work with. And he was the only agent that did that.
So now you are clearly very diverse, not just in your overall skill sets, but within the writing world, you are also diverse. You write comedy, drama, educational shows, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But I'm curious, do you worry that you have not been pigeonholed? Is that a good thing? Or is it that you should be pigeonholed? You know, this is the age-old debate.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There is no hole I could be pigeoned into. I don't, it's one of those things where, look, I didn't set out to do it. It's like I was always good at getting people to laugh. So I gravitated towards comedy. But I liked, even within the comedy world, like I could write broad comedy, and sometimes they'd say, oh, this is good, but it's too broad, so I would tone it down. I was writing character comedy, then I was doing dark comedy. Like, I like all these different kinds of movies, so why wouldn't I just write all kinds of different movies?
What a great way to think of it. Yeah.
Right? And it's like, I love horror movies. I love drama. So it's like, whatever occurs to me, if it's a good story and it makes sense as a comedy, do it as a comedy. If it makes sense as a drama, do it that way.
Were those initial 2 scripts that you sent to the manager, were they very different?
Actually, it's kind of funny. I don't know why. Like, I was living I was born in Brooklyn, grew up in New Jersey, went back to back to New York and NYU for school, never left New York again. My first script was called NYC, about my 20s, being in your 20s in New York. And then my second script was called NJ for New Jersey. It was about growing up in New Jersey and, my neighbors, my parents, my friends, and stuff like that. So it was like stories, like youth stories. And the joke was I'm going to work on a tri-state trilogy and, just trying to find a Connecticut story or Pennsylvania story or whatever. But the point is, they were different though, because the NYC script was very gritty, dirty. There's prostitutes. There's like the grimy, broke ass dudes like trying to get laid and whatever. And then the other one was a little more of a wholesome family, brothers and parents and neighbors, and but had fun stories. One of my favorite stories is the NJ script was a really good compilation of funny little vignettes and stories and stuff that I tried to tie together as best as I could. But it really wasn't a great 3-act structure. It just felt more like episodic. So my agent was like, hey, look, why don't you pitch that as a TV show? And he set up a meeting for me at the WB. And at that point, I had sold some stuff, so I had a little bit of a reputation. But the point is, I went into the WB with my script, and I thought I was meeting one guy to just talk it through. And instead, they bring me into a conference room, and there's 9 people, and they introduce themselves. And by the time it gets to the last person, I've already forgotten everybody's name. And I'm like, they're like, so what do you got? And I'm like, I'll tell you what, let me keep this short. I pull out the script. I go, this is a script. It's called NJ. It's about my life growing up in New Jersey. It's Doesn't really work as a movie, but I think there's like 20 episodes of a TV show in there. It's very episodic. If you guys see what I see, give me a call. And I throw it on the table and I get up and I leave.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's bold.
Yeah. My agent calls me. He's like, oh, someone's got balls today. And I was like, it's the end of the day. I had 4 other meetings. I didn't know what to say. It just felt right. Guess what? The next day they called and they were like, yeah, we see it. We see it.
Wow.
They hired me to write a pilot and we're working on it. We picked our favorite story out of it. The only problem was just as I had turned in the pilot script, and this is back a ways, I get a VHS tape. People even remember what that is.
If you know what that is.
It shows up in the mail and it's for this new show called Malcolm in the Middle. And I'm like, what's this? And I put it in and almost immediately one of the jokes in my script is already on the screen of their thing. Not that they stole it.
Sure.
It's just brothers, family, the whole thing. And I'm like, oh my God. I called the guy. I was like, what does this mean? He goes, it's been nice working with you. So that was the journey of that script. The other one, nothing ever happened with that. But the thing I always say is like, if my manager said, eventual manager said, what do you got? And the answer is, I'm working on something or I'm farting around with some ideas but it ends. The conversation ends. The fact that I wrote these scripts and had them available, even though I was writing in a vacuum, I would finish one and just start the next one. You just do that because you never know.
That may be the key to writers getting work is having something else in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into a meeting and you've only got the one thing and they reject it, you're done.
Yeah.
If you have other things, you at least have a shot at it. They know that you're making efforts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the New Jersey script sounds a little bit like perhaps on the sort of heading toward what you did with Gardener of Eden. A little bit.
Yes and no, because what happened with Gardener of Eden was, so I had sold Just Friends. I mean, look, just taking a step back even further, like I had written a script. Again, I use my bad journalism, right? I had written a script about a kid who gets trapped on spring break with his parents based on me getting trapped on spring break with my parents.
Sure.
And, I didn't realize it was spring break. They had a timeshare in Cancun. I was going to go with my girlfriend and my brother and his girlfriend. And nobody else could go. Nobody could get off work. I went because I was like, why not? I had just graduated college. Let me just take a little free vacation and stay at the timeshare with my parents. And when I show up, it's like, welcome spring breakers. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm on spring break with my parents. I'm 22. And so I bought a notebook and I was just like, let's just make shit happen. And let's just have an adventure and try to get my parents in as much trouble as possible and bring my mom to a phone party at Senor Frogs and my dad's in the hot tub smoking weed with the frat boys and writing it all down. And then I go and I write a script called Sunburned and we went out with that script and unfortunately it didn't sell. And it was my first going out to the town with the script. So then I was like kind of bummed. So then I started writing Just Friends because I was in the friend zone with this girl for 2 years. And I was like, you know what? I was bummed then. And I have this sort of visceral, oh yeah, I remember the last time I was this bummed. So I write that script. And just as I'm finishing that, I get a call that MTV has read my spring break script. They can't do that script, but they have their own idea for a spring break script. I get hired to write that. Then Harvey Weinstein winds up buying the first spring break script. I get a call. It's like, you're not going to believe this. Are you sitting down? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so Harvey Weinstein was on a plane and he saw people laughing. And he said, what's everybody laughing about? And they're like, this script is very funny. So he took it, snatched it right out of somebody's hand, starts reading it.
Of course.
And then they thought he was having a heart attack because he was laughing so hard. He was wheezing.
Wow.
And they were like, oh my God, is Harvey, going to die? And then it was like, oh no, he likes this script. And when the plane landed, he was like, call this fucking guy, get him in my office. I want to talk to this guy. So, okay, great. And I meet with him and he is exactly as advertised and all the bad, warts and all. But I mean, I didn't know the real warts and all, but he was
nobody did, just a few people did.
Yeah, but he was a monster even with me. Like, I'm glad I am not an attractive man as opposed to a very attractive female. Like, you don't want to be near that.
For sure.
But the point is, he buys that script and then New Line buys the Just Friends script. Okay, I had a bunch of stuff going on. So I'd sold these scripts and Just Friends was not a hard R-rated movie. I think it was PG or PG-13. And then I started getting some rewrite jobs for other PG-13 movies, and I felt like I was losing my edge a little bit. So I wrote Gardener of Eden because I wanted to do a hard R, like gritty, dirty movie, kind of like my NYC movie, So, Garden of Eden set in Jersey, but it's a gritty, dirty movie. And yeah, fortunately, my agent was like, look, I don't know if studios are going to get it or producers even, but like actors who have companies that want to do cool movies, like they might get it. And he sent it to Leo.
Well, I've seen both Just Friends and The Gardener of Eden, and I think they're.
You saw Gardener of Eden?
I've seen Gardener of Eden.
Oh,
I have indeed.
it's hard to see. It's hard to get a hold of.
It is available if you look for it.
Good.
And I did. I looked for it. When I knew I was going to be interviewing you, I went out and sought it out. It's definitely gritty and dark, certainly by comparison to Just Friends, which is light and fluffy.
Yeah.
And you did have the incredibly great graces of Ryan Reynolds in Just Friends. Yeah. And he takes whatever material you gave them and he just elevates it to a whole other level.
Not only him, Anna Faris.
Exactly.
Chris Klein.
Exactly.
Julie Haggerty. Stephen Root. I mean, these people are great.
Great.
Amy Smart, she's the straight person. The problem with Amy Smart was always like, she saw everybody else being funny. And it was just like trying to, no, your job is to be the straight person. They'll be funnier if you're play it like, real. But she didn't want to play it real. So it was always
she wanted to be the comedian in it.
Yeah, who doesn't want to be funny? Anna Faris makes everybody laugh every day. So, but Chris Marquette as the brother was great. I got blessed with a great cast.
So tell the listeners who don't know what Just Friends is, what's Just Friends? What happens in it?
Just Friends is about the hell of being in the friend zone. Of course, when you cast Ryan Reynolds, he's such a good-looking guy. What woman is not going to want to be with Ryan Reynolds? So what we did was we started in high school, and he's overweight, and he's the friend of the hot cheerleader, and he's in love with her secretly, but they're just friends. And then he reveals that he has feelings for her, and she says basically like, look, I love you, but like a brother. And the whole school hears it and everybody laughs at him. And he's like, screw this. I'm getting out of here and I'm going to change my life. And so in the interim years, he becomes Ryan Reynolds. He's good looking. He's a womanizer. Everything's going great for him. He works for a record company, but then he has to bring a client to a potential singer, the Anna Faris character, to Paris. And their plane gets diverted. They wind up landing in his home, in Jersey, and he's too close to his hometown not to go and pay a visit. And then he runs into his old Just Friends girl. But now he's Ryan Reynolds. He's a good-looking guy. He's got money. He's got everything. I should easily be able to woo her. But instead, he basically regresses into his old self, and all his plots and machinations, everything that he uses to womanize the other women, none of it works. And it's only when he basically becomes in touch with his old self, who was the nice guy, that he begins to make any kind of headway with her.
It's got lots of really hysterically funny stuff in it all the way through. It's a classic rom-com out of the 2000s, I would say. When was that made?
2005.
2005. It's classic from that era. I think we see less of those today.
Yes.
And I wish there were more of them because they're kind of, funny and they just take your mind off of the world. They're not a burdensome movie to watch.
Right. It's not homework.
It's not homework. Very good way to put it. So how long did it take you to write it? Was that a fast turn?
Yes and no. It's like one of those things where I think I started it. It probably took about 2 years total. And there were many different drafts. But the reason why there were a lot of drafts was also the reason why it sold and why it, even though it took 5 years to get made, why it stayed at the top of the list of things to get made. Because what happened was everybody that read it could relate to being in the friend zone. In fact, people would actually read it and ask, my manager did this and an executive did this. And they were like, is this about me? And it's like, why would I write a movie about you? I don't even know you that well. But the point is, the fact that they felt connected to it that way, I knew a great thing. But it was also there's so many different ways you can do it. Even like in the early days of like after it sold, some of the people that were bandied about to be in it, there was a version where it was going to maybe be Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. It could be one of their movies. Julia Roberts and Adam Sandler. There was Jimmy Fallon was in the mix at one point. He had just started at SNL. Bradley Cooper's name came up after he did really well in The Wedding Crashers and was like, oh, the brother from The Wedding Crashers is really good. Maybe he... And it just kept, different names. And every time there was a new name bandied about, it was like, let's change the script slightly to try to match that.
Of course.
Yeah, so there was many rewrites, and then also just like, oh, is it too broad? Is it too this? Is it too that? There was a Harry versus Sally version that was very romantic. Then there was like, and I was like, look, I really want it to be a comedy first, and then there's romance in it, but like let's have it be funny. And so luckily, Roger Kumble, the director, he also wanted to be really funny. So like at least we were very aligned on that, and we became allies in that fight.
Well, mission accomplished.
Oh, I appreciate that.
How much work, once you had Ryan Reynolds locked and you had a green light, how much work did you have to do on the script to make it Ryan Reynolds perfect?
It's probably less than you probably have to do now, because Ryan Reynolds was not the super...
This is pre-Deadpool and all the rest of it.
Yes. But what we did was, it was like, we knew, the director, Roger and I, we had this conversation where it was like, look, Ryan is kind of like a Jim Carrey. Like we should do built in a special Ryan take for a lot of the scenes. Like, do the script, do whatever, and then do a take, go nuts, do whatever you want, and see what he comes up with. There was also like, we just knew he would be able to turn even things that weren't that funny on the page funny.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the real gem also is Anna Faris. Is like, steals every scene, and there's nothing that comes out of her mouth that isn't funny. We have this extra character that's gonna like really like every scene. So we, I think we even added scenes so that she'd be in the movie more, that kind of thing.
Were you invited to be on the set during production?
Yes.
Which is not all that common then.
No, but I am 3 for 3 on my movies that got made. I endear myself to the director, and I let them know that I am their ally, especially if it's a director that doesn't write. But the point is, it's like, everybody is going to be, that's the thing, you don't realize, like, everybody's against the director. At all turns, everybody's always like, oh, but what about, you sure? Do we need, and like everybody, the studio, the executives, the producers, the talent, like, and it's like, be an ally to the director. The writer is the director's ally. Like my very first movie, that MTV movie, the director said, hey, is there any chance there's a couple of scenes, I think you can make them funnier if you just concentrate on just that scene. Maybe we can elevate the humor. And I was like, sure. And so I attacked that. And then I was like, well, while I'm at it, let's just do that for the whole script. So then I get a call. The director's like, okay, so yeah, you just made the movie like 75% funnier. Can you be on set? I'd love to have you on set with me. And I was like, absolutely. So I'm on set. And the director's like, look, here's the thing. You have carte blanche. You can do anything you want, come up with anything you want. The only thing I ask is don't tell the actors anything. Like, just do it through me, the director.
Well, that's the right protocol.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've been invited on the set, as I said earlier, that's somewhat unusual. Writers are frequently not allowed on set.
Shunned and banned.
Shunned.
They invite you for 2 days. You get a cameo. And then they're like, get out of here. I know how it usually works, but I was like, no, I'm going to be an invaluable part of this. And if they need anything, I'm here to do it and to help.
Did you find that helped to raise your cachet in Hollywood, the fact that you were allowed on the set?
Nah, I don't think anybody cared or knew.
Didn't mean a thing.
Not really.
But it's just so unusual.
Right. I guess so. To me at the time, it didn't feel unusual. It felt like, I will say, like, Garden of Eden was definitely like, oh, the writer's here. Wasn't as much of because it was a low budget movie and they were doing their thing. But I'm like, look, I'm not gonna stand in the way. I'm a director mentality myself. I understand you need to make this your own, but I'm here if you need anything, and you can bounce things off me, or it's like when you shoot a take. Like, the director wants to look at somebody to get any kind of acknowledgement. Was that good, bad? I don't know. And he would look at me and I'd be like, you got it, buddy. Great. Or I'd come over and I'd whisper like, yeah, you know what, that was good. But what if you did it, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's a good idea. because we're aligned. We're aligned. I'm trying to make it as funny and cool as possible too.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the Garden of Eden.
Sure.
Tell the listeners what that's about, because that's completely different from Just Friends.
Garden of Eden is about a guy who just can't seem to get out of his own way. He doesn't have luck with the ladies. He's in school. He gets obsessed by things. He can't get laid, so he meets a prostitute, and he kind of gets hooked on bringing prostitutes back to his dorm, and then he gets kicked out of school. He loses his job at one point. He gets kicked out of his house. He's lost everything. He's kind of a loser.
He's not kind of a loser. He's a loser.
He's a loser. He's a loser. Okay. You're right. And he decides, fuck it. The next guy I see, I'm going to kick the shit out of this guy. I don't care. If I go to jail, who cares? I blew it. It's over. So he sees a guy slinking through the shadows. He attacks the guy, beats the crap out of him. The cops show up. He thinks, that's it. I'm going to jail. It's over. And it turns out the guy he attacked is a sexual predator who's been terrorizing the neighborhood. His picture's been up on bulletin boards and stuff. And he's suddenly a hero. And he decides, that's my calling. I'm going to be this vigilante hero. And it opens weird doors for him. Like one of the girls who was assaulted by this guy, they start a relationship. His dad, who's a Vietnam vet who never spoke to him, suddenly takes an interest in him and wants to help him learn how to fight and defend himself. And he starts trying to put himself in dangerous situations to try to be a hero. He's not very good at it, but it's not a broad comedy. It's very grounded. The other thing is, he has a group of friends from his hometown, and they're kind of losers too. But because they all work jobs in different things, they all hook each other up. Like one guy works at the supermarket and gives everybody free food. The other guy works at the gas station. You get free gas. When he had nothing, he couldn't contribute to the group. So now suddenly he's back in the group and stuff. But they think he's losing his mind. And in a way, he kind of is. And eventually he realizes vigilantism is not the way. And he kind of gets his shit together and goes back to school and stuff. But it's a weird, dark little comedy. I guess, comedy drama.
It's very dark compared to Just Friends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Just Friends is light and Garden of Eden is not.
Right, exactly. I will say this. I saw Fight Club, and then I was like, okay.
Is that what inspired this?
Yeah, it inspired me to write it as opposed to, it didn't inspire the story or anything. It just was like, okay, that was a dark, crazy, cool movie. I want to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. Garden of Eden is one of maybe the only movie that I didn't really do an outline of. I just started writing it. And I was like, let's just see where this goes.
Really? No outline at all?
No. And I was surprising myself and coming up with things as I would go. And I think I wrote it in 2 weeks. It was a weird, never been replicated thing. I worked in a bagel store. So the movie opens with him working in a bagel store and there's crazy stories and some woman gets hit by a car and this guy steals a piece of her brain. It is nuts. There's nutso shit. But some of that actually happened. And so I was just bringing stuff from my life and enhancing it and then just building. And then oh, that's a cool twist. Oh yeah. What if this happens? What if that? And I just started playing what if. And suddenly I'm like, yeah, finished the movie.
And how long did that take to sell then?
You know what? Not that long because, there was an initial, it went out to some producers and the studios and didn't get much of a response. I got a response as wow, that is cool. That is good, soulful writing. We like that. But nobody was making it. And then my agent had the epiphany to send it to actors. And one of the first ones on the list was Leo. And to my surprise, it's oh, I get a call from my agent. He's like, Leonardo DiCaprio's manager just read the script. She loves it. She's giving it to Leo. And then I'm getting a call okay, he's going to read it tomorrow. Then I get a call the next day. He started reading it. Then I get a call. He's 10 pages in and he's smiling. He's still reading. He's 25 pages in. I'm getting literally live streaming the reading of the script. And meanwhile, the ending has got this cool twist ending and stuff. And I'm like, if he can get to, near the ending, I think I've got him because, and they're like, okay, he read it. He finished it. He wants to meet with you. And I was like, oh crap. Okay, great. And a funny story was, I get a call okay, he's at this hotel in Midtown Manhattan. It's a summer day. Be at this place at 2:00 or whatever. I'm a big guy. I wear shorts in the summer. I show up at this hotel And I can see, like, it's basically empty, this cocktail lounge or whatever. He's sitting there with his back to the door. He's got, there's an older guy that I learned is his dad is with him, and his manager is there. And then I go to walk into this cocktail thing, and they're like, sorry, sir, no shorts allowed. And I was like, what? And they're like, sorry, you can't come in. And I'm like, listen, asshole. One of the biggest stars in Hollywood is sitting there with my script in his hand, and this is my career. Please do not let like 1 foot of fabric stand in the way of my career. And they're like, all right, fine, run. So I run over to the table, and I have to like stick my legs under the tablecloth. And, like what an uncouth moron I was. But yeah, and then it turned out, yeah, we had a great meeting. And yeah, his dad loved this. His dad's like quoting parts of the script by page number. Oh, that scene on page 45. I'm like, I don't know what's on 45. What is 45? He's like, oh, that line, but he's quoting the lines. I'm like, good for you, man. Yeah, and it was great. And it did get made pretty quickly. We did have, stops and starts. It was budgeted for much more than they wound up getting. So I had to rewrite the script. That was a painful rewrite, was taking money out of the script, like literally rewriting a script for no reason other than this costs a lot of money. Let's lose that. Let's change that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it was for practical reasons.
Absolutely, but it's still a weird thing.
All right, so you've sold a bunch of stuff. In a moment, I want to talk to you about podcasting and other elements of your career. But I'm curious what it is you think for up and coming writers, what they need to do to make a sale. What is it that you think about when you're writing a script or when you're getting ready to sell it? What do you put into it that you think makes the difference?
Well, look, some people try to ride the trends. Other people try to be very different. The same but different is always that phrase you hear, right?
That's the phrase, yes.
And it's like, how do you tell a story that's kind of a familiar story, but in a very different way? Now, I don't necessarily think that way. I try to, again, the best writing the things that have been the most successful for me have always come from something in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm good at, that maybe better than other people that do it, is like, I'm really good at recognizing that there's gold in them hills. Like, so many people don't realize, like, my friend, and he grew up with 3 brothers, and they're beating the shit out of each other all the time, and all these crazy stories. I'm like, but he's writing a movie about the mafia, or he's writing a movie about the president or cops. And I'm like, don't write about you and your fucking crazy brothers. That is real. Mm-hmm. And come up with a storyline that involves this group. Like, send them somewhere, have them do something, but that's your core, and it's stuff you know. And so many people don't do that. So I think people want to tell stories that feel real for the most part. And look, even if it's a fantasy world, it's still usually a real story within it. And so I think recognizing what's interesting about your life or your experiences or something you've heard, whether it's friends or family, like, there's always cool stuff going on. Look, I heard a story from my mom about my great-grandmother. She was like a swindler. She was a grifter. And one time she fell down the stairs at her house, and she broke her hip and her elbow and stuff. And instead of going to the hospital, she dragged herself to her car. She drove to the supermarket. She spilled some sauce and stuff on the floor and laid in it and said she slipped and fell. No. And she won a huge settlement.
Oh my.
And that's the opening scene of one of my movies, because now this guy has bad luck. And it's like, I have bad karma from people doing bad things in my relatives have done bad things all throughout. And now I'm the recipient of the bad karma. So I took a story that my mom told one time at a Thanksgiving and turned it into an opening scene.
That's amazing.
Yeah. You got to mine the gold. There's plenty of gold in everybody's life.
That's true. And if you can, then you have a really great chance of success. I spent a whole career in Hollywood writing cartoons for kids. And it's very hard to mine your own personal life for Iron Man.
Right.
Or for Batman.
Right.
You can put bits and pieces in, but the basic underlying story is not likely to be from your personal life.
Right, but that's an existing character, so now you're just trying to find stuff for that character who everybody loves and knows to do.
Absolutely.
And there's got to be some kind of connection to some kind of human emotion or whatever,
And you put stuff from your own life in. It's inevitable. You can't help yourself. But the difference is that what you have written are things that are sort of loosely or very much based on your actual, stories from your life.
Right.
That's different. That's a whole other story. So let's talk for a moment about Brain Games and Brainchild. You've got 2 shows with brain in them.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners what Brain Games is, and then tell us what Brainchild is and how they're different, and yet in a way they're kind of connected.
Right. Before I jump into that, I did want to say one thing. So, like, even with Just Friends, right? Like, I was in the friend zone for 2 years with the girl.
Right.
But obviously, this whole other storyline of a guy who starts out heavy and then becomes thin and all that, like, that's all Hollywood stuff, right?
Sure.
But the core, and that was part of the reason why it took so long, is finding the Hollywood story that you're going to wrap around this core of that story.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to say that before I forgot. Okay, Brain Games. So the funny thing about Brain Games was the writer's strike of 2008 was sort of a tricky point. I had 3 projects going into the strike, coming out of the strike. All were dead for different reasons. A studio didn't last, an executive didn't last, blah, blah, blah. So now I was like, kind of just like, okay, what do I do? And I teamed up with a friend of mine from school, from NYU, who was working more as a showrunner. And he was working on a silly reality show, and they needed some help or whatever. So he hired me, and we had a great time working together. And then he was telling me about, like, he worked at Nat Geo, and they did these 3 one-hour specials called Brain Games. And it was basically showing how your brain can deceive you, why optical illusions work, why magic works, why the dress looks one color and then it also looks another color, although it was pre that. But, just different weird things about the way your eyes take in information, your ears, why witnesses are fallible. It was cool stuff that they had done these 3 one-hour specials, but the channel knew that they had something good, but they couldn't figure out how to do a show. They wanted to make a show about it, like a half-hour show. So I was hired basically to come and try to figure out, how do you turn this into a half-hour show? My partner, Jerry Colber, who I run Atomic Entertainment with, the way we describe it is he's brain and I'm games. So it's like he'll come up with, like, hey, there's a thing called this bias, or there's the, the illusion of choice, or the this or that, and I'll say, okay, so what's a fun Hollywoody or visual or fun way to exemplify that particular thing? So that became my skill set of figuring out how to make entertaining television out of neuroscience, basically. And one of the very first ones was I watched this test on your peripheral vision, and there was an X in the middle of the screen, and you stare at the X, and then on the sides of the screen, they would flash numbers or letters. And if you stared at that X, you couldn't tell what those numbers or letters were. It was impossible to see through your peripheral vision. It's not meant for that. It's just meant to show you that there is something there. So I said, well, what if I had like a guy standing with an X, and then I brought in men and women dressed as cheerleaders? Would you be able to tell the really attractive cheerleaders that should be on your squad from the guys with beards and, like, crazy looking dudes? And I called up a guy at the Yale Perception Lab, a guy named Brian Scholl, and I pitched him this thing. I said, would that work? He goes, not only would it work, but can I run that experiment? So that became like one of our first experiments in an episode on focus and how your peripheral vision will let you down if you rely on it as your main vision. It's not meant for that. It's meant to detect whether a tiger is coming at you or a car is coming at you, not to see details or anything. So Brain Games was all about how your brain works or will let you down. And each episode was based on anger, money, all the different ways you perceive these different things. Sometimes it was like shapes or color. And we found all these cool things. And yeah, it did really well for us. The show was Emmy-nominated. We did 50-something episodes. We did multiple seasons. And the channel was always like, oh, you guys are going to run out of ideas. And we just never did, because we were good at slicing the pie really thin and keeping it all these different things.
So this was Keegan-Michael Key was the host, right?
No. So this was before him.
Before Keegan-Michael Key.
Yes. So we did a show. Yeah, our host was a guy named Jason Silva. And we did 5 seasons, I think, or 6 seasons, depending on how it shakes out. Then They did one more season without us. That was like they made it go from a half hour to an hour. We argued that that's too long to devote that much time and thinking. And we were right, I think, because their ratings weren't so good. Then they decided to reformat the whole thing. Let's make it a game show. And they brought in Michael Keegan-Key and they brought in all these celebrities and stuff. And people were like, this isn't Brain Games. This is a different, weird thing, because a big part of that show was interactive, like playing the game with the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Michael Keegan-Key version, you were just watching people play Brain Games. So it's not as fun to watch someone play as to play yourself.
To participate.
Yeah.
So is the thinking on a show like that, I would imagine it's extremely different than trying to construct a story to make a movie out of.
Yes. But I used to say, like, you know, they would be like, okay, we need a script and we don't have a lot of time. And I'm like, dude, I write movies, man. Like, this is easy. This is not that hard. The 22-minute, cable half hour, like whatever. I need 4 games and I'll spread them out. I need some connective tissue between them. I've got my expert interview. I've got my host stand-ups and raps and stuff. Easy, whatever. It's just fill in, with Mad Libs.
Did you wind up having to do a lot of research yourself?
Yeah, I read all kinds of books. I mean, there was what's his name? Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow was like our Bible. I said every 5 pages is a new game, is a new thing to do. We did everything from that book. We got other books, and then we talked to experts. And it's like, what do you got? And we talk to magicians. It's like, what do you got? Like, why does that trick work? Why does this thing work? How does your attention work? Why are you able to steal the thing right out from, we had a pickpocket. Paul Robbins is like the premier pickpocket in the world, but he's also, a great magician. And yeah, he would steal your sunglasses right off your face and then put them on. And now he's talking to you. He wasn't wearing sunglasses a second ago. Now he's not only wearing them, but he's wearing yours. And you don't even realize that A, he stole yours, and that B, you're not wearing them. Like, because your brain isn't wired to realize that kind of stuff.
Which tells you much about eyewitness testimony.
Oh, yeah. We did several games on the fallibility of witnesses.
Mm-hmm. So then what is Brainchild?
So what happened was we finish up Brain Games. And with most shows, right, like the ending is never like, okay, shake hands, everybody's friends. And like, it's more like, oh, they're going in this direction. A new president came in and he thought that we were like walking around like we're too big for our britches and something. It's like, we should bring in some new blood. And we're like, fine, fuck you, bring in some new blood, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know what, let's just end it here. But the big thing was this. We knew that a ton of kids were watching Brain Games. And not only that, it influenced the way we made the show. Like, I was writing an episode called Sex on the Brain, but then when I realized my 8-year-old daughter was enjoying watching the sequences that I would show her and stuff, I was like, man, I'm not going to do Sex on the Brain. I'm going to do about attraction and why we're attracted. And you do an experiment and everybody picks the same 5 things. So it's like, let's keep it like, kid friendly, family friendly. That was the thing. Nat Geo's audience, the average age, I think, was 67. The average age was 67 for their shows.
Really?
For Brain Games, it was in the mid-30s. So we knew a ton of kids were watching. So we were like, the first thing we thought was, let's do a Brain Games type of show for kids. 8-year-olds are infinitely curious. Let's make a show for them. And then our agent calls up and says, you're not going to believe this, but Pharrell Williams just walked into our offices and said, hey, I watched this show called Brain Games with my son. I'd love to do a show like that for kids. So they were like, we know the Brain Games guys. So they brought us in and we met with Pharrell and he was like, I love your show. I love what you do. You tell me how I can be helpful.
That's a good person to have be helpful.
Yeah, it was great. So we wound up, we sold the show to Netflix. We did the 1 season. The joke I make is Brainchild was so successful that they canceled it.
What does that mean?
Right? It means they didn't have to make more because Brainchild sits on Netflix. Here we are 5 years, 6 years later. It's still in the top 15% of all their programming.
That's crazy.
The same show that they bought back in 2018 is still paying dividends today. They don't have to spend another nickel a new crop of 8-year-olds every year finds Brainchild.
Well, that's the beauty part of the animation industry.
Right.
If you're making animation for kids, if you're making stuff for toddlers up to 16 or 17 years old, that audience continues to roll over
Yes.
every 3 or 4 years, and you get a brand new audience.
Yep.
So you can just reintroduce to them the same product, and it's all brand new to them.
Yep. We do that with our Who Smarted podcast. It's like we know that the kids that started listening to this 4 years ago when we started, they're all aged out, and we got a whole new crop of 6, 7, 8-year-olds. So
Was there something in your past that led you to focusing on brain stuff?
no,
Was there something that you grew up with?
no, I hated science. It was my worst subject. My gift is in this space is I can take something that's kind of complicated and something that's not that fun and find a way to make it fun or funny. What's the joke? How do I apply it to football? How do I apply it to something more fun?
And that's just the way your brain works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're wired that way.
Yeah. If I can't make it fun for me, then I don't want to know it. So it's like, that's the thing. If I can make this fun that I would enjoy it,
Mhm.
I assume other people will enjoy it. So Brainchild was super fun to do because doing stuff for kids, but we don't talk down to the kids, but we get to do experiments and really just be innovative with the medium. Like we did an experiment on social media, and we had these kids watch a video that we created of a really bad singer. And then we bring kids into a focus group to watch the video of the bad singer, and we tell them to rate the singer. And we say, don't worry, she'll never see this, she'll never hear this or whatever. And then they're really mean or whatever. Then we say, there's a chance you might meet her. They suddenly change their ratings to make it not so bad.
Sure.
I think I did it backwards. I think we started with, you might meet her, and it wasn't so bad. And then we said, oh, never mind, she's never going to see it. And they went full mean. And then we bring her in, and she's reading her evaluations, and the kids are just horrible. But it's like, that's what happens on social media. You think you can say stuff because you think they're not, nobody's going to say it. And parents would write to us all the time, and they would be like, your social media episode was so important. It was such a great lesson to teach the kids, like, don't be a jerk on social media and stuff. And like I said, every year a new crop finds the show until it's like dated or, whatever. There's no reason to make more. So our 13 episodes are still just plowing away.
It's like people in cars. They think because you're in a car, you're not like you're in line behind somebody at a store. You're in a car, so you can just say whatever you want to say about them.
Well, you can honk your horn.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Like, nobody stands behind someone and goes,
So let's talk about podcasting briefly, because we're running a little bit long, which is just fine. What got you into podcasting? Obviously, we're doing a podcast right here, but tell us about Slaycation and Who Smarted and Mysteries of True Histories and your Oscar show, The Oscars, What Were They Thinking, with Bruce Vilanch. What got you into doing that?
Podcasting, mainly the pandemic.
Sure.
When we couldn't shoot, we couldn't pitch, we couldn't make any TV. We couldn't even pitch TV. We couldn't do anything. So it's like, the good thing about Brainchild was that we came up with an idea that, like, we created a curriculum that went along with the episodes. So there were 13 episodes. We had a 13-part curriculum. And we said to people, you can get the curriculum for free as long as you send us your email address. So we had like 10,000 to 12,000 email addresses of people who signed up for our Brainchild Netflix show's curriculum. Okay, now pandemic hits. What do? Let's get microphones. I can write. We can record. Let's do a kid show that's like, 10 to 12 minute long, and we'll pick topics and we'll just have fun with it and make it zany. And guess what? With a podcast, you can be in space. You can be under the ocean. Doesn't matter. You just play a sound effect and they think you're there. And let's do something super fun and super cool, but also educational. And we'll blast it out to the 10,000 people who had signed up for the curriculum and said, Brainchild's not coming back, but there's this new thing, podcast called Who Smarted, and it's going to teach your kids, and they're going to enjoy it. It's great for car rides, bedtime, all that, and it blew up. Who Smarted blew up, and just every month, more and more and more people finding it, saying on Facebook, you got to check this out. You got to check this out. So, okay, great. And then, Mysteries About True Histories is our other kids podcast. Mysteries About True Histories. If you take the first letter, it spells out math. So it's a hidden math in every episode. So like, Who Smarted is more science and history. Math is more like math, obviously, and some geography and some history. And so we have those two. But we also wanted to do an adult podcast because, let's be honest, advertising on kids shows is limiting because it's got to be family friendly. So how do we get anybody to want to advertise? I know, true crime. And I had this idea, murders and mysterious deaths and disappearances that happen while you're on vacation, and I called it Slaycation. And so my wife is a huge true crime nut, and she's got an amazingly great voice. I was like, you're going to be the star, and Jerry, my partner, the two of you will tell the story, and I will know nothing about it, so I can ask questions and make jokes and be a proxy for the listener, and it'll be a fun format for the three of us to do a show together.
So you're saying you didn't write it. It was something that just came as you were live doing it, or?
No. I mean, basically, I had the idea of murders and mysterious deaths on vacation, and then I said, let's do a podcast, but my wife and Jerry, they research the case. And then we go into it. Yeah, but we do it. We record it live, basically. So they tell the case to me.
But you don't know ahead of time.
I have no idea.
So you're just actually reacting to what they're saying to you.
Yes. Reacting, making jokes. I mean, so many times I'm listening back to it and I'm like, oh, I should have said this. Oh, I should have said that.
Well,
yeah.
Isn't that true of 1,000 conversations you've had in your life where you walk away and 20 minutes later, why didn't I say that?
Exactly. Almost everyone. But at the same time, as a producer, I know the women, mostly women that are listening to Slaycation, are not here for comedy. They like that we keep it light and have a levity to it, but it's not a comedy show. It's not meant to be doing stand-up. So a little goes a long way. And it's different than the other shows that are very serious and stuff. We don't take ourselves too seriously. These cases are crazy. People think that they can kill their spouse on vacation and make it look like an accident and get away with it. They're morons. And twists and turns galore. And crazy cases that, have you scratching your head and what the fuck is wrong with people. But that's super fun. And then obviously I love movies. And I had this idea about the Oscars and looking back at the Oscars of the past to see what they got right and wrong. But, I can just say, oh, I think this should have won or that, blah, blah, blah. We got to get somebody who's got real Oscar cred. And Bruce Vilanch.
You sure did with Bruce Vilanch.
Yeah. Bruce Vilanch is a godsend, and he's a joke machine. His memory is impeccable. He knows all the movies. And so we call it the Oscars, What Were They Thinking? And for me, it's like, what were they thinking? How could they do this? And he is like, no, here's what they were thinking. And he tells you why, in the 1 year, The Apartment, Psycho, and Spartacus came out, but only The Apartment was nominated for an Oscar. So Psycho and Spartacus left, not even nominated the year they came out. And he's got a reason for it. I don't agree with the reason, but he has, but also, what was going on at the time and what were the, we have fun. We look at different years, year by year, award by award, and try to see what they got right, wrong, flubs, snubs, all that fun. And it's great.
Well, I mean, he's, 5+ years.
Yeah.
He's been either a writer or around the show in some capacity. And he's obviously a great resource because he's right there in the thick of it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. Yeah, there's a lot of cool behind the scenes stories from the night of the actual awards for the 25+ years that he worked on it. But then he's seen all the movies. He knows. I mean, I try to see as much as I can, but there's no way you can catch up on everything.
I can only imagine what kind of chaos there is backstage during those shows.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, he told a great story about Catherine Bigelow was up against James Cameron for the the Hurt Locker versus Avatar, and he was like he was walking past her or something, and it was a commercial and stuff, and she turns and she goes, "Bruce, could you hold my purse just in case I win?" And he's like, "Okay." She's like, "You think that might be bad luck though? Like you're jinxing yourself." And she's like, "I don't know. No, I don't believe in that." And so he's like, "Okay," and he went backstage, and sure enough, she won. And then she's like, "I'll take my purse." And it's just like. Yeah, some really fun behind-the-scenes stories of the making of the show, the hosts, the turmoil. Yeah, he's great for stories.
Well, this has just been an absolutely wonderful hour plus so far with Adam Tex Davis talking about Hollywood, all things storytelling, and just really fascinating, fun stuff to hear. We're going to wind the show down a little bit right now, and I'm just wondering, you've told us these fantastic stories already, but I'm wondering if you have a story or two that you can share with us that's from your career that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or maybe just plain funny.
Well, okay. I have a story that I love because it's both funny and goofy, but also taught me about writing in a way that nothing else had up until then, and even since. So it's the first movie. It was the MTV movie that I had gotten hired to write, and basically, I had written a spring break movie about a kid on spring break with his parents. MTV brings me into a meeting, and they say, "Hey, we've got a guy. He's a lawyer, and he goes on spring break." He's like in his 40s or whatever. He goes on spring break, and when kids get in trouble, he gets them out of trouble. So we want to do a movie called Spring Break Lawyer. And I was like, oh, okay. I go, well, you guys are MTV, right? So it's like, you don't want to watch a 40-something-year-old lawyer. Like what I would do is I would have like a law student who's kind of a fuck up, but like, he's just barely getting by. He's doing a lot of cheating and stuff, but he gets caught. He gets kicked out of school, but he's already bought his spring break ticket. So screw it. He goes down there. He's drinking. He's getting in trouble. And something happens, and he gets rounded up, and suddenly he's before a judge. But he uses the little bit of legalese that he learned in law school, and he gets out of trouble. And another kid says, oh, my God, can you help me? And he gives him some kind of thing to say, and it works, and that kid gets out of trouble. And now everybody's coming to him, and he starts a cottage business out of a bar. He's the spring break lawyer. And she goes, okay, so you're hired. You can write that. And so I write Spring Break Lawyer. And of course, like it's the first thing that gets made. In fact, the first day of the shoot, I think an extra had asked, like, where's extras holding or whatever. And I was like, oh, I think it's over there. He's like, what are you doing on the shoot? And I'm like, oh, I'm the writer. He's like, the writer? Oh, my God. Like, congratulations. I was like, yeah, I mean, I've written all these scripts that I think are really good, but the one that got made is Spring Break Lawyer. As I'm saying, he starts to laugh, and I'm like, yeah, all of a sudden hands reach out and grab me and yank me between two parked cars, and it's the director. And he overheard me say that. And he goes, how old are you? And I was like, 28. He goes, listen, asshole, I've got friends who've been in the business for 28 years who haven't gotten anything made, so friggin' appreciate it. And I was like, you are so right. I am so sorry. I gave him a big hug, and he walked off. And then I went up to the extra. I was like, anyway, fucking Spring Break Lawyer or whatever. But I knew what he was saying, and I appreciated that. But the thing I wanted to say that taught me was the director comes to me and goes, hey, I've got a cameo idea for you. There's a scene where the spring break lawyer is starting to get popular, and he gets hired by a kid who's in big trouble. And he shows up at the hotel where the kid is staying, and he's so popular at this point that other like frat boys and people recognize him or are like, dude, spring break lawyer, you're awesome. He goes, how would you like to play one of those frat boys? And I was like, sure. He goes, in fact, you can be the lead one that runs up to him and says, you're the spring break lawyer. Awesome. And I was like, oh, cool. So the day of shoot, I go into the trailer. They make me up. They put the wardrobe on me and everything. And then I'm sitting there going, wait, my line is, you're the spring break lawyer. Awesome. I'm like, that sucks. Who wrote this shit? Oh, yeah, it was me. So then I'm like, okay. So then they're like, okay, let's do a rehearsal. I run up to him. I go, hey, you're the spring break lawyer, right? And he goes, yeah. I go, awesome. Sign my ass. And I pretend to pull my pants down, and I bend over in front of him. And everybody just starts laughing. And they're like, what was that? And I go, that was a rewrite. They go, dude, that's hilarious. That's great. Are you going to do that? I go, yeah. You guys think it's funny? Yeah. I go, okay. And then, the first take, I run up and I do sign my ass, and I pull my pants down, like, to my underwear. And then I take a Sharpie that I had, and I go, make it to Lewis. And everybody again starts dying laughing. And that scene taught me more about writing, because it's like, man, it took being in the movie to realize, like, this sucks what I wrote. It was throwaway crap. Like, how do you enhance it? How do you make it better? Now, did I just write Hamlet? No, I wrote Sign My Ass. But it's funnier than what was there. What was there wasn't funny. It was stupid and nothing. So I'm like, I write now, pretend like I'm going to play this part. Is this something I'd be happy to do? Is this something that would stand out in any way? So I apply that filter to a lot of things when I'm writing it. Like, you write the base scene and it's whatever, but then you go back and like, how do I embellish this? How do I make ring comedy or ring drama or ring fear or whatever, whatever genre you're writing in? How do you get the most out of what you're doing?
It's the spice that you added to it.
Yeah.
It's that you've taken what was there and elevated it by the detail in it.
Yeah. That's taught me more about writing. I like, the sign my ass rule.
The sign my ass rule. That's now going to be legend.
I hope
The
so.
sign my ass rule. All right. So last question for you today, Tex. You've given us tons and tons of advice throughout this whole show, including the story you just told us, which is great advice. But do you have a single solid piece of advice that you like to give to those who are starting out in the business, or maybe they're in a little bit trying to get to that next level?
The key, I think, is, especially these days, is versatility. That is the key word. I have been able to sustain a career by being versatile and being able to pivot and not being afraid to put something down to do something else. Like, I've done screenplays, I've done TV, I've done reality TV, I've done unscripted, which has a lot of scripting. I've written articles, I've written, now it's podcasting, and I've written for adults, I've written for kids. And just being able to embrace and just say, like, look, the through line to all this is I'm writing. I'm getting to write and be creative. And just don't worry like, oh, I used to write screenplays. Now I'm writing a kid's podcast. No, who cares? You're writing. You're writing for a living. And just being able to pivot to different things, but also training yourself to be as versatile as possible will make you invaluable. I mean, on any given day, I might write a promo for shows. I might have to write ad copy. I might have to write a podcast for adults. I might have to write jokes to put in, I'm writing an intro for me and Bruce Valanche. So I have to, there's all kinds of, every day I write about 10 different things, and they're all vastly different sometimes. And just being able to know, like, look, good writing is good writing. And if, you learn the craft, be as versatile as you can. Don't be afraid to pivot.
I think that is about as solid and outstanding a piece of advice as you could possibly get, because the business is not set up at all for someone who is just literally stuck in one gear. It can be, but it's better if you have that versatility you're talking about, that you can run this way or that, because frequently they're not looking for what you do, what you think you do. They're looking for something else.
Yeah. You don't want them to not hire you because they only consider you for one thing,
We're going back to the pigeonholed idea. In some ways, good to be pigeonholed, but in other ways, it's very constricting. So I think that that's extremely wise, wonderful advice. Adam Tex Davis, this has been so much fun for me to listen to your stories and to talk to you today. And I can't thank you enough for your time, your energy, and certainly for your wisdom.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's great talking to you.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great Story Beat episodes to you. Story Beat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.